I inherited a fortune, but I kept it hidden. My parents always treated me poorly while indulging my brother. At their bankruptcy hearing, I finally revealed who truly owned their mansion. When my grandmother died, I received two gifts from her: her fortune and her wisdom. In her final letter, she reminded me that people show their true colors when they believe you have nothing. That was me when I got the letter along with documents outlining my inheritance: diversified investments, international real estate, and controlling stakes in several major companies. My grandmother, Eleanor Wright, had built an empire from nothing, and she did it quietly. Everyone knew her businesses, but very few knew the woman behind them. My parents never grasped her brilliance. To them, Eleanor was just that miserly mother-in-law who refused to support their extravagant lifestyle. They had no clue she was one of Chicago's richest women, and that was exactly her plan. Did that grandmother of yours leave us anything useful, or is it just another pile of her old books? My mother's voice cut through my thoughts as I sat at the dining table still clutching the letter. I looked up at Diana Maxwell, the woman who had spent the last 2 decades trying to mold me into her idea of the perfect daughter, and failing spectacularly. She stood in our kitchen doorway, impeccably dressed as ever, disappointment etched on her face. "Just books," I fibbed, smoothly tucking the letter and a few old photographs away. "Typical, you never understood the importance of maintaining proper social status. Can you imagine what the Hendersons would say if they saw our 10-year-old car?" I did know. I'd heard about the Hendersons, the Blackwells, and every other family my mother had tried so hard to impress for years. Their opinions meant more to her than air. "They're too busy with their own lives to care about our car, Mom," I replied. "That's exactly the attitude that worries me," she snapped. "You're just like her, completely clueless about how the world works. Thank goodness Alexander has some sense." Yes, Alexander, my younger brother, the golden child, even though he's never worked a day in his life. Why should he? Mom and Dad have funded every one of his whims, from his failed startup ventures to his luxury watch collection. And speaking of Alexander, my mother brightened. He's been accepted to Harvard Business School. Your father and I are hosting a celebratory dinner tonight, and all the right people will be there. Wear something appropriate, she added, her eyes sweeping critically over my plain dress and simple jewelry. I nodded silently, not mentioning that I'd graduated from Northwestern's business school last year, an achievement my parents had never celebrated. Instead, they had spent that weekend at Alexander's amateur golf tournament. Later that evening, I sat in my modest apartment above the bookstore where I was supposedly working, going over my grandmother's documents. In reality, the bookstore was just a front. I owned that building and 3 others on the block through one of her holding companies. But my family believed I was just a struggling bookkeeper, living paycheck to paycheck. My phone buzzed with a text from my father. "Don't be late tonight, the Blackwells are bringing their son James. Wear the blue dress your mother bought you." James Blackwell, of course, they're still trying to set that up, thinking he'll be my ticket into high society. If only they knew I could buy the Blackwell Company 3 times over. I arrived at my parents' house exactly on time in a simple black dress instead of the preferred Gaudy blue. My mother had insisted on a valet service. I gave the valet, who looked at me with a sympathetic expression, the keys to my modest Honda Civic. Inside, the house was transformed. Crystal champagne flutes, a grand chandelier casting soft light, and elegant floral arrangements adorned every surface. The air was heavy with expensive perfume and pretension. My mother's voice echoed through the foyer, tight with barely concealed irritation. "I thought I told you to wear the blue dress. This one is clean." "Yes," I replied simply. She closed her eyes briefly, gathering her patience. "At least try to make a good impression on James. His family's company is extremely successful." I offered a weak smile. Remember, the report on Blackwell Industries' recent financial troubles. Most of their success was just smoke and mirrors. At that moment, Alexander made his grand entrance, drawing every eye in the room. Dressed in a perfectly tailored tuxedo that probably cost more than my supposed monthly salary, he strolled in. "There's my boy," our father boomed, clapping him on the shoulder. "Harvard Business School's newest star." I watched as one person after another congratulated him, praising his natural business acumen and sharp mind, none remembering his 3 failed businesses, all propped up by our parents' increasingly strained resources. James Blackwell sidled up to me, a glass of champagne in hand. "Sophia," he smiled, his teeth gleaming and his charm in full swing. "Still working at that little bookstore?" "Someone has to pay the bills," I replied dryly. He laughed as if I had said something truly funny. "You know, my family's company always has positions available for motivated people." "I'll keep that in mind," I said. The evening continued in much the same way. A parade of wealth and subtle condescension. I watched my parents fawn over Alexander, making endless excuses for his past failures while heralding his imagined future triumphs. But behind the sparkle, I could see the cracks. My father's hand shook slightly as he signed the catering bill, and my mother's eyes tightened whenever someone mentioned their recent vacation. Really a desperate business trip to salvage a failing investment. They were in trouble, though they'd never admit it. Years of funding Alexander's lavish education, failed ventures, and extravagant lifestyle had taken their toll. The mansion, their pride and joy, remortgaged 3 times to keep up appearances, was slowly slipping away. What they didn't realize was that I had been watching, waiting, and quietly buying up their debt through various shell companies. Every desperate loan, every refinanced mortgage, I owned them all. Driving home that night in my sensible Honda, I remembered my grandmother's words. People reveal their true selves when they think you have nothing. And soon my family would show exactly who they really were. The signs of my parents' financial collapse became impossible to ignore, even for them. It started small. The staff was cut back, the country club membership lapsed, and suddenly my mother developed a strange passion for vintage fashion. Yet Alexander's lifestyle never changed. Even as our finances crumbled, my parents continued to fund his every whim. The day I saw him cruising past my bookstore in a brand new Porsche, I knew they had finally hit rock bottom. I was in my real office now. Not that cramped back room in the bookstore, but a proper office on the 7th floor of downtown Chicago's most prestigious building. As CEO of Wright Investments, I had a perfect view of the city my grandmother helped build. "Miss Wright, my assistant Sarah is online." "Yes," I answered. "Your brother just made another withdrawal from your parents' emergency fund." I pulled up the banking records on my screen. There it was, a transfer to a luxury car dealership for money they didn't have. "How much do they have left?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Less than enough for Mom and a mortgage payment due next week." Leaning back in my chair, I thought about the intricate web I'd woven over the past year through various holding companies. I didn't just own their mortgage, I controlled all their debt. Every credit card, every loan, every desperate attempt to keep up the facade of wealth. "Schedule the foreclosure notices," I instructed Sarah. The next morning I arrived at the bookstore early, fully aware of what was coming. My mother burst through the door, her designer handbag genuine but outdated. "Sophia!" Her voice was shrill with panic. "Something terrible has happened. The bank says they're going to foreclose on the house." I looked up from the ledger I was pretending to review. "How is that possible?" "Your father, there have been some business setbacks, but it's only temporary. We just need a little help," she pleaded, reaching across the counter and gripping my hand. "Darling, how much do you have saved?" I almost laughed. After years of mocking my so-called bookstore job, she now eyed my supposed savings as if they were a lifeline. "Mom, I barely managed to save enough to cover rent and bills." Her face fell, but she persisted. "Surely you must have something, a little emergency fund." "I've got about $50,000 saved," I lied. "That's everything we need," she declared immediately. "Just until your father's deals come through. And Alexander has some promising ventures on the horizon." I studied her. "What about Alexander's new Porsche? Can't he sell it?" "Don't be ridiculous," she snapped. "He needs to maintain appearances. How else will he attract the right investors?" "And my appearance?" I countered. "That's different," she waved her hand dismissively. "You're just not in those circles anyway." In those circles, I thought, remembering the charity gala I was hosting next month, where half of Chicago's elite would be in attendance, a detail my mother had no idea about. "Sorry, Mom, but I can't empty my savings account. I need to pay rent." She stood abruptly, anger replacing desperation. "How can you be so selfish after everything we've done for you? What exactly have you done for me?" The question hung between us. For a moment, confusion crossed her face as if she was really trying to recall any significant help we'd provided. We gave you a good home and education. The education I paid for with student loans. The same loans you refused to help with because you were funding Alexander's third startup. That's not fair. Alexander has vision. He just needs support to get out. My voice was low but firm. Excuse me. Get out of my store, Mom, and don't ask me for money again. She stormed out with slammed doors and bitter threats. But I wasn't worried. Everything was unfolding exactly as planned. That evening I received another call, this time from my father. Sophia, we need to discuss this situation like adults. He began, his voice taking on a businesslike tone. Your mother said, "You were completely useless today, I can't give you my savings." Listen here, young lady, Dad interjected. This family's reputation is on the line. We can't let the house go into foreclosure. Do you have any idea what that would do to our standing? And to Alexander's future? I thought about the foreclosure notices being prepared in my lawyer's office at that very moment. Maybe Alexander can help, I mused. He just bought a new Porsche. He must have cash. That's different, my father countered. It was an investment in his future. He needs to show success to be successful. And what about your future? He sighed heavily. Sophia, let's be realistic. You work at a bookstore. Your future is, well, it's already set, isn't it? But Alexander has real potential. The word stung, though I'd heard variations all my life. I'm sorry, Dad, I can't help. Then you're no daughter of mine. He snapped before the line went dead. I sat in my sleek office, looking out over the city lights, and smiled. Soon they'd see exactly what kind of daughter I was. The bankruptcy hearing was set for 10 a.m. on a crisp October morning. I arrived early, watching from my car as my family pulled up in Alexander's Porsche. Apparently the only car they had left. My mother's designer outfit was flawless, though last season, and my father's suit looked worn. Even Alexander's usual confident smirk seemed forced. They hadn't seen me yet. They thought their wayward daughter was still scrimping away at the bookstore. I followed them into the courthouse with my briefcase full of documents that would change everything. Proof of ownership, transfer records, and the truth about who really controlled their fate. The bankruptcy courtroom was already filling up with Chicago's elite, eager to witness the Maxwell family's downfall. My parents sat in the front row, heads held high despite their troubles. Alexander slouched next to them, busy tapping on his phone. All rise, the bailiff called as Judge Marion Wheeler entered. A no-nonsense judge known for her strict approach, especially in cases of self-inflicted financial ruin. Case number: Maxwell Family Bankruptcy Petition, she announced while reviewing the papers. I see the creditor representative is present. That was my cue. I rose from the back, straightening my tailored suit, something my family would never expect from me, since they always saw me in off-the-rack clothes. Yes, Your Honor, I'm Sophia Wright, representing Wright Investments, I declared. The reaction was immediate. My mother's perfectly maintained facade faltered. She whirled around. My father's face turned pale, and Alexander even dropped his phone. My mother whispered, Sophia? I walked to the front, setting my briefcase on the creditor's table. Good morning, Mother, Father Alexander. What is the meaning of this? My father demanded, rising before his lawyer hushed him. Judge Wheeler, he began, but she banged her gavel. Mr. Maxwell, maintain order. Miss Wright, please continue. Your Honor, Wright Investments holds all of the Maxwell family's outstanding debts, including your mortgage, personal loans, and credit accounts. The total is approximately... That's impossible. Alexander blurted out. Sophia works at a bookstore, he added. I smiled. Actually, I own that bookstore, the building it's in, and most of the block. I'm the CEO of Wright Investments, formerly known as Eleanor Wright Enterprises. The courtroom buzzed with whispers. My grandmother had been a legend in Chicago's business circles, though hardly anyone knew her face. Order, Judge Wheeler commanded. Miss Wright, continue. 3 years ago, I inherited my grandmother's entire estate, valued at roughly $15 million. During that time, I watched as my parents repeatedly refinanced their home to fund Alexander's failed ventures and maintain their lifestyle through various holding companies. I ended up buying all their debt. My mother broke down in tears, her makeup melting away. My father sat frozen, perhaps finally grasping the magnitude of their situation. But I'm not here to demand immediate repayment, I continued. I have a proposal. I withdrew a document from my briefcase. I'm willing to restructure all outstanding debts under the following conditions. First, Alexander's spending privileges are to be completely revoked. He must find real employment instead of chasing another startup dream. Wait, you can't do that. Alexander jumped up. I'm your brother. Sit down, Mr. Maxwell, Judge Wheeler ordered. Continue. Second, my parents will attend financial counseling and follow strict budget guidelines. Third, they will sell the mansion and move into a modest home, which I have already purchased for them. This is outrageous, my father finally managed. You're our daughter, you can't treat us this way. I turned to face them fully. Can't you see? For 20 years you treated me like nothing. You mocked my job, dismissed my achievements, and poured every resource into Alexander, leaving me to fend for myself. When you needed help, you demanded all I had in savings without a second thought. You gave him everything. No, mother, you gave Alexander everything, my mother protested. I built this empire myself, or rather my grandmother helped me build it. She taught me that true character shows when people think you have nothing, and you've shown yours very clearly. Judge Wheeler reviewed the proposed agreement. The terms were fair, more generous than standard bankruptcy proceedings. Do the Maxwells wish to accept? My father's lawyer whispered urgently. They really had no choice. It was this or lose everything. Excellent, I said. I retrieved more documents. Here are the keys to your new house, a charming 3-bedroom in Lakeland Park. The moving company will arrive tomorrow. And Alexander? I turned to my brother. The dealership has been instructed to repossess the Porsche. I've arranged for a used Toyota to be delivered instead. The next hour was a whirlwind of signatures and legal formalities. My parents barely met my eyes, their shame and anger palpable. Alexander stormed out as soon as he could, probably to hide his money, which I had already frozen. As I left the courthouse, I heard quick footsteps behind me. My mother's voice was small. Why did you let us fall so far before revealing the truth? I turned to her. Because you needed to learn that money isn't what makes a person valuable, and neither are appearances or social standing. I wanted you to understand what it feels like to be judged by your bank account rather than your character. And now, will you ever forgive us? That depends on you, I replied softly. The house I bought for you isn't luxurious, but it's comfortable. Your new budget is modest, not extravagant. What you do with this second chance is up to you. I walked to my car. Not the familiar Honda Civic, but a sleek Mercedes I'd kept hidden until now. Oh, and Mom, I added with a smirk. About that blue dress you wanted me to wear to Alexander's party. I bought the company that made it last year and they've discontinued that style. It was hideous. The look on her face made all the past 3 years worth it. 3 months later, I sat in my office reviewing reports. My parents had actually stuck to their budget, attended financial counseling without complaint, and Alexander had finally taken a real entry-level job to learn what work felt like. On my desk sat a new photo frame with an old picture of my grandmother and me in front of her favorite bookstore, the very one I now owned. Her final words still rang true. Sometimes people reveal their true selves only when they think you have nothing. But she also taught me that sometimes, the greatest power lies not in wealth itself but in choosing when to reveal it.